Operators are humanoid entities that are physically indistinguishable from normal humans, but which have psychic capabilities which they use to control the majority of other humans who are physically inert or psychologically inert. While operators outwardly behave as if they are normal human beings, their psychic correspondences reveal an entirely separate culture and society fixed on creating pain and suffering from the non-psychic humans whose lives they control, who they refer to demeaningly as things. These entities were described at length in Operators and Things, a 1957 book by Barbara O'Brien, which describes her experience with a schizophrenia-induced breakdown. As such, they are generally viewed as being a symbolic manifestation experience rather than real beings. And this was the view of O'Brien herself. Since the work's initial publication, the idea of separate human species living in plain sight and dominating the bulk of humanity has entered into paranormal and conspiratorial rhetoric. Similar beings found in contemporary lore are men in black and a species of reptilian. On the surface, the operators resemble humans and seem to exist alongside normal human society, while secretly using their psychic powers to control many people like livestock, causing the events in their lives to become painful and miserable. The negative energy is somehow harvested by the operator, who feed on a substance created from human suffering. O'Brien explains the operators are working with an economy of human suffering, and for them this is completely abstract and neutral work. Most people cannot access the wavelength of mental communication that operators use. O'Brien's breakdown was internally rationalized as having accidentally switched to the operator's frequency like a radio. Most of the operators with whom O'Brien communicates do so through hallucinatory telepathic communication, and she does not see them directly, except through a mental image. Some of them look completely normal and realistic, while others have unusual appearances. The operators appear to have a complex society centered on human suffering with rules and conduct procedures when in the physical world, and in her hallucinatory inner world herself to request access that return to her neurotypical baseline. There are several explanations for what these beings could be, including a hoax. Many have speculated that O'Brien's book is pure fiction, arguing that because the author used a pseudonym and many of her hallucinatory experiences did not fit a diagnosis of schizophrenia, it was probably a creative work rather than a biography. However, it is worth mentioning that the book was published in the 1950s when the symptoms and causes of schizophrenia were poorly understood and difficult to distinguish from other mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder and PTSD. O'Brien herself seems to have been familiar with only the key figures in psychoanalysis such as Freud and Jung, and her writings could therefore be seen as naive attempts to convey these insights. Her experience with an actual mental breakdown, perhaps not quite schizophrenia, using the limited knowledge base she had at the time. Perhaps it was a hallucinatory manifestation of a real-life hierarchy and the manipulative sociopathic culture which pushed O'Brien to the brink of sanity, or maybe a true parallel human species whose society and culture O'Brien gained access to. An unnamed man was burned alive in a public park by 5 Burbank, California police officers sometime before 2011. The earliest known information about the date of this incident could be several months or years prior. Since 2011, hundreds of flyers, posters, and signs have appeared throughout the community of Burbank, California, and the Los Angeles metropolitan area, posted in highly visible areas such as the utility boxes, grocery stores, public parks, and traffic signs. Typically, the content of the signs describes an incident in which 5 Burbank, California police officers and a rich man kidnapped the victim and forced him to defecate outside a steakhouse. They moved the victim to an abandoned wastewater pumping station between the freeway and the Los Angeles River. There is a dirt road for pedestrians and equestrians at this location. The unidentified victim claims that the rich man and the 5 police officers examined and hurt him. Some posters depict him nude with objects inserted in his body connected to generators. Posters mentioned bodies being hidden in the large pipes of the wastewater station in Burbank, and Burbank police hiding or dumping them there. After an unknown amount of time, the police took the victim to a nearby park, injected him with substances, and burned him alive. He claims that someone, a deformed person, witnessed the incident. The witness is often described as a wrinkled or perhaps severely burned and is referred to by the victim as the hidden one. He calls this witness Rubber Face and Neapolitan Face and mentions that the witness lives somewhere on the Los Angeles River. Almost every poster seen in Los Angeles depicted a series of imaginary and supposedly impossible situations he encountered and experienced while buried alive, including his escape to a local hospital. The first is that after being buried, he finds a trapdoor. After talking to God, he reportedly said that God told him to find a hidden door in the ground, or that God cried and his tears revealed a hidden door through which he escaped through a series of tunnels and walkway below the park and into a pipeline leading to a nearby hospital. He often illustrated E.T. in these posters, sometimes to represent God or as a toy he encountered underground. Another toy he illustrated in the posters was the Bananas in Pajamas doll, which he called Food That Doesn't Look Right. Some posters depict him receiving books and dolls representing Peanuts characters. Several posters found in 2011 and 2012 depict cutout maps of the walkway found beneath the park. In these images, the victim suggests that he has moved from the original grave to 2 separate caverns, the lowest of which contains a large pipe connected to St. Joseph, located less than 1/8 of a mile from the site. The text on these posters is difficult to decipher. Many have speculated that the cause of mental illness, substance abuse, or English not being their primary language. Conversely, the art that accompanied the text suggests skill and ability. Perhaps the creator and possibly the victim was an artist. Some posters appear to be written in the first person, while others present accounts from the perspective of an eyewitness. Several different means appear to have been used to create them: ink, charcoal, pencil, paint. It is unclear how these posters were printed and distributed in Burbank and Los Angeles. If, as some anonymous bloggers and commenters have claimed, the original artist struck while crossing the stretch of highway past the scene of the alleged crime, then in November 2011, questions remain: who is still printing and publishing them after 5 years? There could be multiple creators of the posters. Several different styles of handwritten art have been documented. Perhaps the original victim and creator of the posters is still alive today, working secretly to spread his story, or the original creator left behind a surplus of posters that are now in the hands of others continuing their work, or a guilty police officer is seeking to amend his participation in the events, which is highly unlikely, or the alleged witness, the hidden man with a distorted face, continues to spread the story. Perhaps the most likely is that it is just a prank. In 1975, production began on one of the most famous works in the horror genre, a chilling depiction of the foretold coming of the Antichrist and the inevitable end of times. The Omen was born from the success of The Exorcist, a frightening and sinister adaptation that forever changed the landscape of the film genre. The Exorcist was a huge success. To date, it ranks among the highest-grossing horror films of all time, making over $232 million. The film also received 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Director. With that success, it seemed that The Omen would be a surefire hit. Producer Harry Bernhard took that into account. However, what he probably did not expect was a series of strange events that combined would make The Omen notorious as one of the most cursed works in cinema history. When The Omen was just an idea, Bernhard was given a serious warning, according to the Los Angeles Times. An advertising executive approached him with an idea involving the Antichrist. The concept was presented cautiously. He warned us that he thought the devil didn't want us to make the movie, Bernhard said. In later interviews, they recalled how they predicted the curse from the first moments. If you make this movie, you're going to be in trouble. If the devil's greatest weapon is invisibility and you do something that will take away his invisibility from millions of people, he won't want that to happen. Hello. In The Omen, special effects artist John Richardson performed a particularly gruesome beheading scene. He survived a car accident in the Netherlands, but his passenger and assistant Liz Moore was not so lucky. She was beheaded. According to local reports, a nearby line indicates the distance to the nearby town. Omen, 66.6 kilometers. One of the film's stuntmen, Alf Joint, was also in a bridge too far. He ended up being hospitalized after one of his stunts went wrong. In the scene, he was supposed to jump from the roof onto an airbag, but he seemed to fall suddenly and strangely. When he woke up in the hospital, he said he had been pushed by something. Problems erupted before production of the film began. The catalyst was said to be the tragedy of the lead actor Gregory Peck's son, who took his life just 2 months before the first days of filming. When Peck flew to London to take the role, his plane was struck by lightning. A few weeks later, chief executive Mark Newfield boarded a flight from Los Angeles. His plane was also struck by lightning, and he called the experience the roughest 5 minutes he has ever spent on a plane. However, production of The Omen was already underway. Bernhard began wearing a cross on set. At one point, the team rented a small plane for aerial filming, but the craft was given to another customer at the last minute. The plane is believed to have... The plane is believed to have crashed during takeoff, taking the lives of everyone on board. More worryingly, situations appear to be hindering production. Newfield, whose plane had previously been struck by lightning, was staying at the London Hilton Hotel with his wife. The building was bombed by the Irish Republican Army. As filming progressed, the disasters multiplied. In a particularly scary zoo scene, a group of wild baboons reacted violently to Damien's presence. According to director Richard Donner, Damien's mother, played by actress Lee Remick, was extremely scared while filming this scene. For the safety, cast and crew, an animal trainer was hired to care for the baboons involved in the scene. He lost his life the day after our shooting there. His life was taken by a tiger. It grabbed his head and took him instantly. What happened to Harvey Stevens, the boy who played Damien? He seems to have completely disappeared. In 2001, AMC made a 90-minute documentary called The Omen Legacy. The film retells many of the previously mentioned stories and includes interviews with the original cast and crew. Stevens was nowhere to be found. I met him 9 years ago, Bernhard said. At the time, he was a handsome and wonderful boy. He was tall and rather beautiful. It was the only movie he ever made. Kevin Burns, executive producer of the special, even went so far as to hire a private investigator to approach the former actor. I'm sure he's still out there. We tried really hard to find him. In fact, he returned to the stage in 2006. He had a small role in the remake of The Omen. As far as we know, nothing unusual happened during the reboot. Silence raises the question, is The Omen's curse real? Was it a coincidence or just bad luck? In Vienna, a teenager drowned while holding a sheet of music in her hand. In Budapest, a businessman took his life and left a note quoting the lyrics of the same song. In London, a woman overdosed while listening to a recording of the song on repeat. The music that connects all these passings is the famous song Gloomy Sunday, nicknamed Hungarian Suicide Song. It has been linked to more than 100 people taking their lives, including its composer. Of course, this could be just an urban legend. However, one thing is certain: Gloomy Sunday composer Rizzo Serras took his life, and the success of his biggest hit may have been a contributing factor. In 1933, he was a 34-year-old struggling musician. Some stories say he lived in Paris, others in Budapest. The story goes that after his girlfriend left him, he was so depressed that he wrote the song that became Gloomy Sunday. Others say he wrote the lyrics about war and the end of the world, then turned them into a heartbreaking ballad. In any case, the song did not initially attract too much attention, but 2 years later, a recorded version was linked to a wave of people taking their lives in Hungary. The song was then banned. Unless you know Hungarian and look through the Budapest newspapers from the 1930s, it's impossible to verify any of this, but it certainly makes for an interesting story at the time. As music producers from the UK and US became intrigued, several musicians composed English translations of the song. The second verse of the song reads, "Gloomy is Sunday, with shadows I spend it all my heart, and I have decided to end it all soon. There will be candles and prayers that are sad. I know, let them weep. Let them know that I'm glad to go. Death is no dream, for in death I'm caressing you with the last breath of my soul. I'll be blessing you." The third verse is later added by English translators that shines a ray of light to darkness of the melody. Reads, "Dreaming, I was only dreaming. I wake and I find you sleeping in the deep of my heart, dear." In 1941, Billie Holiday recorded the final version of Gloomy Sunday. The difficult pairing of Lady Day with the song certainly added to the tragedy.